So today we have a K7000 19-inch P447 medium resolution chassis. Now I have not had the pleasure of doing a medium resolution on the channel yet, and the only real dead giveaway that with this being a medium res versus standard res is that the medium res has this little white capacitor box or bleeder box, whatever you want to refer to it as. It's basically just a capacitor, and in the frame of the monitor it sits right here next to the chassis. And I don't know which game this came out of, if I can't recall, but the owner of this contacted me and said, hey, I got this medium resolution K7000 and it's blowing the fuse. If we look here, you can see the fuse is kablooey here, so we'll just take it out. But it's been capped and a new flyback and everything, but it is blowing the fuse. Now, they gave it a look over and told me that they don't see anything visually wrong with it, except for one thing. If we look here by the linearity coil, this is the linearity coil here, you can see that resistor is a bit burned up. It should look like that one and this one. It should look normal, but it's all burned up. Now if we turn it over and look at the bottom side, it's not even soldered in. It got so hot that it oxidized the pad and the leg, and the solder basically just fell off. If I push up and down on the resistor here, you can see that it's not even soldered in. It looks like it never was even soldered in, but it was. The leg got oxidized and the pad got oxidized from the heat, and it just fell off. The solder just fell right off. I've never seen anything like that before. I've seen the pad get oxidized from heat, but not the solder fall off. That's just, when you compare it to the other side, that's just insane. So I don't know if the resistor burning up was a result of this happening, or if this happened because the resistor burned up, and the resistor shouldn't burn up at all. It's just a resistor across the linearity coil. But I do have a whole cornucopia. Since we're approaching Thanksgiving, I'll say cornucopia of parts chassis, and I can just rob one from here. But we got to figure out what caused that, if that's a secondary result of something else happening, for instance if C38 opened up or whatever. But so we're gonna have to replace that resistor, fix that solder pad, and see if we can figure out why that occurred. Now I noticed that someone has done the cap kit, but they did not replace the cap here on this daughter board. They didn't change this cap out, so we'll have to change that as well. Then we'll go through and see what we can figure out. Now I do want to say also, I do not have a medium resolution tube. So after we fix this, the only real way to test it is to install it on a standard res tube and a standard res yoke. Now I've never done that before. I'm assuming that I should be able to do that at least for a little bit and have it operate. Like, I'm assuming that maybe for 15-20 seconds it should be just fine. All I need to do is turn it on, make sure the fuse doesn't blow, make sure we get an image, make sure it's not wavy, make sure it's not collapsed, make sure everything is working, and we get a good, solid, decent picture, and that's all I have to do. I'm not going to be able to do the burn-in on it or anything like that, because I don't have a medium res chassis a medium res yoke and tube to do, this is the chassis, to do long-term burn-in testing. I don't have that. So, but I do have standard res that I can at least turn it on, make sure the fuse doesn't blow, make sure we have a good, decent looking, good looking image, and at least be able to say, yes, it's repaired now. And then the owner of this is gonna have to do his own burn-in. If it goes bad again, then we can we'll tackle that when we get there. But for the purposes of getting it repaired to where it doesn't blow the fuse anymore, we're going to have to do that. Now there's also an added component on the medium res visually that you can give it away, is this thing right here. The standard res doesn't have this little component here. Now they refer to that as well, I'm not quite sure. There's there's no silkscreen for it on the standard res. There's a jumper right there by R72. And then if we look at the medium res, there's an actual silk screen. There's a silk screen, somewhat of a circle there around underneath that component. So there is a visual difference. You can spot the medium versus standard by this little component right there. If you ever had, if this thing was missing, normally it's a dead giveaway because this is installed. But a lot of people that have the medium res, they'll replace the flyback and not put this back in because it's not really needed. It's just like, it's like on the U5000, it has the extra capacitor box, the bleeder box, if you will. for gun games. This is kind of like what that is, but it's not 100% necessary to operate. Like I have a medium res Paperboy. I have a medium res K7000 in the Paperboy at the arcade. I don't want to tear it apart to use that tube and monitor, because I don't like messing with things if they're working. I don't like messing with it because you never know when it could stop working from what you're doing. So for instance, in that chassis, I don't have this in there. Whoever worked on it previously deleted this, and it still operates and works just fine without this. But a lot of people delete this out of there. This particular person has simply, hardwired it back in circuit here, and it's basically just for your focus. So it's to improve focus and clarity for medium resolution. But anyway, so otherwise it's the same as a standard res. So we got to start by trying to figure out what's shorted and what's causing the fuse to blow. Then we'll fix and replace that resistor and clean up that pad and kind of go from there. But anyway, all right, so let's bust out our meter. Go to diode mode, and let's first check our HOT. Negative lead on the middle leg. As I look at this, it looks like someone's used low melt solder on a lot of this stuff, and that's not good. Like this should all be shiny, but it's dull. So I'm wondering if someone used low melt solder on this at some point. But anyway, all right. So middle lead is our negative, and then each outer leg is positive. Should be 0.45, give or take. And our HOT is shorted. Okay. Voltage regulator on the fat voltage regulator like this, the 30 STR 3123, the fat one, not the tall one. It's pins 1 and 4. Negative on 1, positive on 4. We should get 0.150, give or take. Okay, HOT is shorted, voltage regulator is shorted. Wow, okay. Well, we're gonna have to take those components out and test them out of circuit before we test everything else, because it can throw off our other readings on C36, for instance. But I do notice that there's some bad solder joints here. Most notably right here. We can see how that's cracked all around there, so that's not good. Anything else other than, of course, we have this right here. Let's see. R101 surprisingly isn't too bad. It's still dark from heat, but it's not too bad. Yeah, I don't see anything else offhand. We do have R89 here. It is looking pretty thin. But our flyback pads, see how these are dull? They shouldn't be dull gray. They should be shiny, nice and shiny. And I think the owner mentioned some lifted pads. Yeah, see, this one's lifted a bit. I don't know if you'll be able to tell, but that one's lifted. But it doesn't matter if they're lifted as long as they have good connection and the trace isn't broken. Should be okay, but we'll test that stuff. But first we have to get the HOT and the VR out, because it'll mess up our other readings if we try and test some stuff with them in there shorted. Let's grab this here. Voltage regulator, not so much. The voltage regulator really isn't going to affect anything else in the circuit if it reads shorted, but the HOT will. Most notably, C36 will read shorted if the HOT is shorted, and vice versa. So right now, I don't know if the HOT is shorted or if C36 is shorted, because if HOT is shorted, C36 will also read shorted and vice versa. So you have to get one of them out of circuit before you go through and do your testing to find out which one it is. Now normally I'd be using my desoldering station to do this, but I broke. You may have noticed in the last few videos, if you're an astute observer, that there's some masking tape on the can, the plastic can that has the solder in it. Well, I was trying to clean the tube here and accidentally broke it. I busted a piece off of the end here, trying to clean off all the stuck solder on the inside of the plastic, and accidentally broke it. So I super glued it back in place and put the tape around it, and it just doesn't quite seal as well anymore. So it's probably only operating at maybe half efficiency, and until I get that glass tube replaced or fixed more properly, it's not going to be usable, so to speak. So I'm just using my braid here, going back old school. All right, so that should have the HOT out of there. And let's grab this. Alright, so that's out. Now let's test it out of circuit. Is it C36 that's shorted, or is it the HOT that's shorted? And look at that. 0.497, 0.513. It should be the same on each leg, but the HOT is not shorted. Now, that's why it's important to test the component out of circuit. Now, if we go to the pads, do the pads still read shorted? No. C36? No. What in tarnation? That is odd. Why would it read shorted in circuit? What in tarnation? What about these two? Okay, yeah, see that's normal though. Well, I'm thinking that the HOT itself. Yeah, okay, there we go. It is shorted. Normally you read it this way. Like middle to each leg is fine, but they should read the same. See how middle to left leg is 0.5, middle to right leg is 0.516? That's not normal. It should be 0.45. So we have a 0.5 and a 0.516, and that's not normal. But if we go to each outside leg, that's 0.039. So our HOT is the problem. Okay, that was misleading there. Okay, I'll grab a new HOT. Here we are. And we'll use this for comparison. Alright, I'm going to need that anyway, so I'll leave that out. I'll need a new voltage regulator too. So let's grab one of these. This was a STR 3123. That doesn't seem right, but I guess it is. Are they all in here? There we go. 3123 and HOT. How many of those do I have left? One. I've only got one of those left. I got one. One left. Well, gosh darn it. Have to remember to order some of those. Okay, and we're going to need to test these new ones. Alright, so again, 1 and 4 should be 0.5, give or take. Yep, 0.578. So that's good. And then HOT, we should have, it should be around 0.45 or so. 0.48, 0.5, and then 0.39. I guess, that's normal? Maybe this isn't bad. Why did it read shorted in circuit, but doesn't read shorted out of circuit, and the pads don't read shorted? What in tarnation? Let's put it back in. Now I'm having a head scratch here. If we go diode mode and we touch middle lead or negative lead to middle in each outer leg, we don't get a short. But I think the problem lies in that this is shorted, but I think it's supposed to be. I could have sworn that was the case. Yeah, see? It's shorted on the parts chassis. I think that's normal. Why? You know what? We're going to put this right back in. And I'm not going to attach it to the frame, but I do need to use the screw here as a guide. Okay. And I want to solder this right back in. It's early in the morning, and maybe it's just too early, and my brain doesn't work. But let's go ahead and solder this back in and test it again. Okay. All right. See, now it reads fine. I have no explanation. Did I do something wrong? Why did it read shorted before and now it doesn't? I'm wondering if it was something with the insulator. Was the insulator? Oh, found it. Here's your reason. Look at our insulator. It's burned up. It's burned up all around here. It's burned right there, and it's burned right there, and it's burned right there. That's our problem. The insulator was allowing the exposed metal part on the back side of the HOT here to touch the ground and arc it out. And I'll give you an example here. So right now, we're not touching the frame there. And if we read our HOT, you can see that it reads fine. But if we were to attach this, where did my driver go? There it is. If we were to attach this just for experimentation's sake, I can't see. There we go. And screw it in with no insulator. Now, magically, shorted. See that? So I knew I wasn't going insane. I'm surprised I didn't think of that earlier. But that's not something you normally deal with, is a shorted insulator like that, or a bad insulator. So our HOT is good. Okay, we can put this back in the stock. All right. And that could have been our whole problem right there. Someone could have let this cook and zap and cook and spark, and it could have taken out something over there, but I don't know. That saves us an HOT. Okay, now with that problem solved, or figured out, I should say, let's grab an insulator and fix that permanently. Okay, I got a deal of insulators here. Let's go with, we got the transparent ones. Let's go with one of these here. I think that'll work. Now you got to be careful when you do this, because if the back of the HOT was arcing, it can cause welds, basically welds on the back of it, and it can poke through your new insulator. So you have to take a look at it and make sure. Let's take it out again real quick. You want to make sure the back of it is flat and doesn't have any protuberances, if you will, weld protuberances that will poke through our new insulator and cause a problem. Okay. And if we look at it, seems okay. I don't see anything that would, see, we don't see anything, so I think that's okay. Let's grab this and kind of clean it off a bit. And it's a little deformed around there, but I don't see anything that would be of concern. So yeah, let's just put it back in, screw it in, and go about our troubleshooting. This one, need to get the... Alright. So the easiest way to do this is to put the screw through the component, put this through that, and then install it. There we go. Okay, I think that'll work just fine. And people like to put thermal compound on here. You really don't need it. I mean, this is a pretty beefy heat sink, and it touches right to the frame. It's this whole frame here is all one big heat sink, so you really don't need the compound, but people like to use it. I don't bother with it because it's not really needed. Same thing with the voltage regulator. It's not really needed. Okay, again, you don't want to tighten the ever-loving crap out of this. Just nice and snug is all you need, and that's where we're at. Now, let's go ahead and, because half of this pad is missing, I'm just going to take this and fold it over and try and create a big bridge across to the next pad. The other pads are okay. This one, half the pad's missing, so I'm just gonna make a bridge across to the next. There we go, just like that. Oop, dropped my leads here. So, all right, we'll consider that okay. Now let's test it one more time. Well, it might help if you could see here, sorry. 0.48 and 0.48. Okay, that is fixed. Now, with that done, let's test the voltage regulator again. And it's still bad. Okay, so let's take that out. And again, there's two ways you can test and verify the voltage regulator is bad. You can read across the actual voltage regulator itself, but the red and blue wires here coming off the B+ resistor go straight to pins 1 and 4. And we already know pins 1 and 4 are shorted, but you can go to ohms mode and go across your resistor and you should read 180 ohms, give or take, but we're reading 4.6 ohms. So that is an indication that your voltage regulator is bad. Now, resistors don't short. They either open or go out of tolerance. So with a 4.6 ohms, you know, it could be the resistor going out of tolerance down to 4.6 ohms, but it's likelier that it's your voltage regulator. So that's just a quick and easy way. So if you have a voltage regulator that's the 4-pin wide one or the 4-pin tall one, if you want to avoid trying to figure out how to read that, just go to the resistor, read across the resistor. If it reads 180 ohms, you're good. If it reads shorted, it's the regulator. It's the easiest way to do that. And I just realized now that there's the top part of this linearity coil, the magnet part has come off. I'll have to secure that back in place, but get this other screw out and we'll desolder this puppy. There's almost no solder even still there, so make it easy for us. Okay, now that should come right out, hopefully. There you go. And what is going on here? There's this big area here with this weird stuff going on, and it corresponds to this. See that big area there? I think we'll throw a new insulator on this one as well, because that's weird. Can't say I've ever seen that before. Let's throw a new insulator on this one too. But before we do that, let's measure this here. We got the old one. Okay, so new one, 1 and 4. 0.578. Old one, shorted. So that's a goner. All right, let's grab a replacement insulator. Do I even have? I don't know if I have. Yep, right here. I was gonna say I knew I had them. We'll throw a new one of these in there. Clean up these legs here, flatten them out. Oh, what am I doing? That's the old one. No? Well, I must have removed this from a parts chassis. Okay, yeah, I must have removed this from a parts chassis. Either way, that's fine. So we need to put that on there, get one of these in here. Actually, probably just put them both in here. Now let's see if we can get this in here. It's always fun with these wires in the way trying to do this, but let's see if we can accomplish it here. I'm gonna say probably not, but we'll try. And I got it, but the insulator came loose, and of course it doesn't want to line up because of these wires in the way. Ugh. Let's take a look at it from the side and see how far off we are. Not even close. Okay, well, let's just remove the insulator and slide it in afterward. Okay. So there we go. Now you got to be careful. You don't want to poke holes in your new insulator, so you try and get it in there roughly lined up. There it is, and there it is. Now let's get these screws through here. Stay there, you. There's one. Normally it's not so tough because the old insulator is fine and it stays in place because of the thermal compound, but sometimes it can be a bit of a more difficult task here. Okay, so that's in there. Insulator's in place. Let's secure this back down. And again, they just need to be snug, don't need to torque them. Okay, that's good. That's good. I don't know where this cap kit came from because these caps are Jackson or JackCon? JackCon. There's a shadow on there. JackCon. JackCon. Never heard of a JackCon before, but okay. All right, now let's solder that back in and we'll test it. Pads look okay, not oxidized or anything, so we can just put new solder on there. All right, now if we go to our resistor, it should be 180 ohms or so. There we go, 175 and climbing because the pads are hot. And then if we go to diode mode and 1 and 4, switch these around. There's our 0.15, like I mentioned before, 0.147, 148. Yep, so it reads 0.15 instead of 0.45 because you're going through the resistor. So, all right, so that takes care of that. Now, let's deal with testing everything else. We got to test C36. So if we go diagonally from here to here, 0.49, here, diagonally here to here, 0.49, so that's cap is good. D18 is good. Again, D18 is this diode that's missing. What? Is D18 not required on the medium res? Look at this. D18's missing. D18 is missing. But the legs are cut off. Is that normal for medium res? See, if you look at this one, D18 is right there. It's clear that it used to be there. Somebody cut it out of there. Is it the factory did that? I'm not familiar enough with the medium res 7000 to know if that's supposed to be there or not. I don't think it'll hurt anything by not having it there, but maybe that's why this happened. Because you can clearly see the legs are still there, right there and right there. Huh. Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put one in. I don't think it's going to hurt anything. And that is very odd. And then why does it give us the diode reading when we do that? It gives us a diode reading. Maybe it doesn't need to be there because it's already a diode. If we look at the... Well, we're reading a diode because we're reading through the HOT. That's reading through the HOT through this leg here, which is part of the ground. Pretty sure. No, it's not tied together through ground, but it is part of the HOT like this. So basically by going like this, you can't see here, I'm sorry. By basically going like this across D18, it's the same. See, it's 0.491. It's the same as going across the HOT. 0.491. So yeah, I'm gonna put a D18 in there. I don't think it's gonna hurt anything. We'll find out. Let's find out together if that does anything. Why? Obviously it was there and somebody removed it. Now, did the factory do that? I don't know why they would have done that. They would have just not put one in at all. Well, that went through the other side there. That is odd for sure. Okay. Well, I'm going to take the D18 out of this one. And this one has thicker legs on it than this chassis has, the holes are. So I'm going to just solder it on the bottom side. If you want to hate me, go ahead. But that's what I'm going to do. And here it is. So let's make sure it's good before we put it in. And it is. How do I get a staple there? Okay. So yeah, these holes aren't quite big enough for this to go through. I could probably make them big enough. But I don't know. Yeah, I guess that'd work. First gonna do it on the bottom side. All right, so it needs to go with the cathode this way. Come on, you, get down there. Actually, you know what I should do? I should probably flatten this out. Let's flatten it out by soldering in this side. Now let's bend this leg out. Then we can. All right, there we go. Now what's interesting here though is that it's not quite soldered in there. There we go. Still not soldered in. I need to clean off the oxidation there. Okay, that one should be good, but this side is a bit oxidized and it's not sticking. There we go, that'll work. All right, now, you know, it's hotter, or it's hot. It's hotter than it should be, but we're gonna test it right now anyway. And we get, yeah, see, it'll rise as it cools down. 5, 6, 7. All right, I don't think it'll hurt anything by having it installed, but we're gonna leave it in there just for now. All right, so HOT, voltage regulator, D18, C36 is good. Let's make sure our width cap, C38, is not shorted. And that's this guy right here, and it's not, so that's good. Let's test our Let's test R97, should be 270 ohms. And it is. R89 should be 3.9. And 3.7, that's close enough. R101 should be around 5K in circuit. And we're at 4.6, 4.7, 4.8, 4.9, so okay. R88 should be 1.8K, 1.8. R96 should be 1.8K. Come on. Any day now. 1.8K. All right, R104 should be 15 ohms. It is. R103 should be 2.7 or so. 2.8, that's good. Rectifier diodes. Good. 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 Good and good. All right, well, that completes our testing of the power circuit. That should account for it powering up. Everything that normally would cause a fuse to blow has been checked and replaced as needed. But now we need to take care of and tackle our bad solder joints. And R96, ooh man, R96 here is very bad. That is these two here. This one here that's cracked and this one here that's all burned up. That's R96, so we're going to remove that solder. Then we're going to remove the resistor. Come on, there you go. No, you don't want to leave, but you got to. There we go. Okay, now what we'll do is we will just go ahead and clean up those pads. All right. And let's clean up the legs here on the resistor. Alright, let's get rid of this fiberglass right into the trash can here. Alright, now let's get it back installed. As soon as I find it, let's line it up. And okay, that takes care of that. Alright, I think that'll work. Now, let's reflow our yoke header pins because they're looking pretty bad. Alright. And let's hit R89 here. This from the side, we gotta go here. And this one's actually not bad, but we'll hit that one too. Okay, and R104 always needs to get a little love here. At least one of them is always worse than the other. Okay, that's good. Now let's do our normal R101 tactics. Alright, there we go. And we'll do the same thing over here. There we go. All right. So I always like to put a bridge across there because this helps with the heat evacuation across the pad, because this thing will burn up and this thing will burn up, and you get real bad, intermittent connections and no power and things like that with R101 being out of circuit because of the bad connection. So I always just bridge these two to aid in the heat dissipation from R101. So that's good there. Any other solder joints? Let's take a look and see if there's anything else that I need to address before we take care of this flyback. Nobody has ever reflowed the video header pins, so we're going to reflow the video header pins. Nope. I keep losing that. Yeah, this green pin was about broken. And there's almost no solder on the blue pin. All these pins are barely hanging on. The sync pin, though, that's got a mountain on it. Alright, I think that's not bad. But I'm going to hit my normal stuff here. I always like to do the ribbon cable because the ribbon cable is always pretty thin when it comes to the solder joints. And I'm referring to this ribbon cable right here. Let's hit up R103 here because that looks pretty bleak. And R91. I'm just going over and looking at anything that might need reflow that looks suspicious, and I'll just hit it real quick. But alright, so now I'll just take care of some stuff over here in the power section. Move that out of the way. All this stuff over here looks like it's been heat damaged, but that could have been from the HOT arcing and someone leaving the chassis on for who knows how long while that's happening. Okay, I think that'll be okay. Now I want to fix this pad. We don't need to remove the resistor for that. All I need to do is push this leg through. And then I can clean this up. Look at that, good as new. Now we'll put our resistor back through and we'll hit some of this. Stay down there, you. Okay, and now it should wait a minute, I'm a dumbass. I completely forgot that I'm going to replace that resistor. Oh man. Oh, I can't even get a good grip on it to take it out of there. It's still morning. It's still morning. Alright, take that side out and take this side out. I forgot that I was going to replace this thing. And yeah, look at that, I just cracked it trying to remove it. So it likely was just fine, but I don't want to reuse it. So we're going to steal that resistor from this parts chassis. Just like so. Here we go. And we need to remove some of the solder from the leg here so we can get it through the hole. There we go. Alright, now we need to take all that solder off that I just put on there. Okay, now let's get this guy through here. R98 this was. R98 this was, her. It's important to note that these resistors will read shorted in circuit because it's going through they go across the linearity coil. So if we go to ohms here and we take this resistor and test it, it's 2.2K, 2.248. Now we're going to test it. I'm going to put it back in and solder it in, and then we'll test it in circuit, and you'll see that it reads shorted because it's going across the linearity coil. So if you read these and they read shorted in circuit, don't fret, because like I say, resistors don't short, they just open or go out of tolerance. But if they read shorted in a circuit, that's because that's because they go across the linearity coil. So they're gonna read shorted. Come on, don't do this to me. There we go. Okay. I was trying to break my newly repaired pad. Okay, nice. I think that about covers it, except for the flyback, which we'll get here momentarily. But now with that in circuit, if I read it in circuit, check it out. In circuit, it reads, if I can get on it here, see, 0.3. So that's a normal reading. That's a normal. Alright, now we need to get a little dab of glue here because we need to put this back on. A little dab will do you, as they say. We need to put this back on here like so. And what helps is that it's a magnet, so it'll hold it there on its own. There we go. Now, we need to take care of this flyback issue. This is all the wrong type of solder to use. So we're going to do one pad just for a show and tell. You can see how dull all those are. Let's just remove this here. I have no idea if this flyback is any good. I imagine that it is. But now that we have that off of there, there we go. So now you can see the difference there between the shiny one and the dull one. So all these need to be redone here. I'm sure it will work just fine, but this will help me also determine if the pads are bad or shorted. No, I'm sorry, not shorted. Bad or open, or cracked or broken, whatever you want to refer to it as. And this big ground plane's always a pain in the ass. So it's important to note also when you're doing something like this is to not apply too much pressure, because pushing on it real hard can also damage the pad or the trace. You want to just kind of apply gentle pressure and let the heat do its job. You don't want to push real hard on there. You can lift the trace, damage the trace, break the pad, whatever you want to call it. That's why it's ideal to get a desoldering station. Why is this cracking and sizzling on me? I think there's wet. It's cracking and sizzling like bacon in a fryer, in a frying pan. I think there's still leftover flux residue or something, because it's cracking and sizzling on me. Okay, good enough. Let's reflow all these. I didn't see anything wrong. I didn't see any broken pads or any of that stuff, so if the pads were broken, they would have spun around and came off with the solder, so that's all good. All right, that's looking better already. Let's grab some alcohol here and do a little cleaning. Where is my... The whole chassis needs a good cleaning, but it's outside the scope of this video. I'll get it all clean off camera, but that's the general process there. Is I use my pliers here to scrape away all the residue as much as I can, and then I just use the alcohol and the brush. I mean, it's not perfect, but much better than it was. And you know, a couple more rounds, it might look a little bit better. But all right, so I think for what we need to do here, I think that's good. put this back the way it was across this way. But okay, everything else looks all right. So we have tested all of our power components. We have replaced the bad voltage regulator. HOT insulator was replaced because it was arcing to the, or touching the frame, and that's what was grounding it out. I have no idea if these cheap Jack Con capacitors are any good, but I'm assuming they are. We got a D18 installed. The more I think about it, it probably isn't supposed to be there, but I don't think it'll hurt anything to have it in there. But we'll find out. So let's get a picture tube, and I don't know if I want to replace this capacitor because it wasn't replaced, but which was 100 volt 22. Let's replace it. I have plenty of those. Plenty of these. We'll do, what is this? That's 50 volt 22. Let's do, we'll do 250 volt 22 right there. And negative goes that way, so come on. All right, well, if you want to be that way, we can be that way. Man, okay, well, I'll have to get more surface area on there, because there we go. Now, you can see here that we have 100 volt 22. We're going to put in a 250 volt 22. So, and the negative went this way, just like so. Come on, heat up there. This tab is going to the frame, so it's absorbing a lot of the heat. So that's why it takes so much to get that heated up like that. All right. Well, boys and girls, I think that about wraps it up. We found we had a blown fuse, we had a bad HOT insulator, we had a shorted voltage regulator, and then we had a cap that wasn't changed out, and then I went ahead and replaced the insulator for the new voltage regulator. So that's what we got so far, because I don't know what else is wrong. You know, I didn't check the pots, the neckboard pots, those are all intact. Someone's got the green turned all the way down, so I'm going to go ahead and do what I always do and just kind of wipe these back and forth and put them to the middle. Because if you have a good working picture tube, you should never have to have everything one of them turned down all the way. So the owner of this, when they get it back, is going to have to readjust these because they're not going to be set for the tube anymore. But I always do this to get a good baseline to tell me whether or not I have color problems. So it's a small price to pay to have to put them back, but that's what I normally always do. Okay, so I'm going to grab my circuit breaker. And we're going to use a circuit breaker here instead of a fuse, so we can find out if there's something still wrong. We don't blow a fuse and waste about $3. So yeah, I'll get this on a tube. Like I say, I don't have a medium resolution tube or a yoke, so I can't do long-term testing, but I should be able to at least power it up for 30 seconds, make sure it works, operates, doesn't blow the fuse or the circuit breaker, and gives us a full picture, no collapse, good colors. It should work long enough to do that. So let's see how that turns out. Okay, so I have a standard res K7000 here, and we got the medium res K7000 chassis on it, and I have the little box there sitting right where it would normally go if this was a medium res frame and everything. So we're all hooked up. We got anode neck, yoke, ground, power, video, and there's no remote board, but the pots are still there intact. So test pattern generator, set to medium resolution. Let's turn it on. I'm going to give it a little bump here just to make sure it powers up and nothing goes haywire. Then we'll leave it on for a few seconds to make sure we get an image, make some small adjustments, and then hopefully it works here. So let's find out. 1, 2, 3. Oh, let's watch our circuit breaker here. 1, 2, 3. You know, it helps if I plug it in. I always forget that. Okay, here we go again. 1, 2, 3. Nope. Isolation transformer just immediately hummed at me. Let's try again. 1, 2, 3. Nope. The transformer just goes, here, listen. Yeah, I don't know if you can hear it, but something is still bad. Oh, we got something smoking. Ooh, yeah, I can smell it. I mean, just that 1 second of... What is it? I can't see. We got... Oh, it smells terrible. Oh, man. Oh, I've never smelled anything like that. That's... Oh, whew, that's bad. Something is still very bad. Well, oh, man. You guys need to... I wish there was smell-o-vision, because that is bad. Whew, man. I don't see what it is. And we didn't even have it on long enough to do anything. Whew, man. Well, let's see if we can figure out what's wrong, because nothing tested bad that we normally test, so let's see what we can figure out. All right, well, it turns out it was the HOT. Even though it was reading correctly, under load, it was just failing, and if you smell it, here, smell it. It smells burned up. So it still reads out of circuit correctly. It still reads, 0.5 to each leg from the middle, but under load it's failing and it just smells all burned, and that's what that little smoke was coming from here. So even though it seemed flat, it was still arcing out of the backside of here to the frame. So I changed the insulator once again and replaced the HOT with a brand new one, and then there's our circuit breaker. So let's turn this on, and now 1, 2, 3. It's not very energetic. It doesn't crackle up like a normal K7000 does, but it does work, although it has this thing going on here. I don't want to leave it running for very long, but it does operate now. So I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to set up the tripod and see if we can make some adjustments to make it look decent. I'm not going to leave it on for more than a minute or so at a time, and we'll see what we can do to make this look okay. All right, so I kind of jumped ahead here. I didn't want to leave it on for very long, so I just decided to go ahead and make some adjustments, turn it off, make some adjustments, turn it off. And I'm not worried about size or shape, really, because this isn't the dedicated yoke or tube. But we can see that the image is bouncing up and down. It's blooming and bouncing up and down. B plus is steady at 122. 8 bounces around 8 to 9, but it's steady. It's not jumping up to like 120, 118, or 125, but the image is bouncing. It's hard to see, but it's bouncing around. I'm going to turn it off. So I don't trust these caps, these Jack Con caps, whatever they are. I'm going to do a full cap kit and more reflowing and stuff, see what I can figure out. But I don't think it's a voltage regulation issue. HOT is working, Flyback is operational. It is odd though, but it doesn't like crackle up and crackle down. It's like when you turn it on, it's like you barely even hear it high voltage energized. So I don't know if the Flyback is at fault. I'm going to do a full brand new cap kit. If it still has the same bouncing around issue, I'm going to change the Flyback, see what I can do to make this work, because I don't think it's the way it's supposed to be. Even though it's narrow on the image, I don't account that necessarily to being the wrong yoke. I think that may be an issue with these crappy caps. So what I'm going to do is do a full cap kit, make sure it doesn't bounce around. If that fixes it, we'll call it good and I'll show it off. But if it's still bouncing around, I'll change the Flyback, see what that does, and kind of go from there. So stand by for a moment. I'll come back and see how that all turns out. Okay, so we're here at the arcade. I don't know if you can hear me. I'll have to find out later if you're able to hear me, but I've got my Paperboy machine here. And what we're going to do is we're going to install this chassis in the Paperboy machine because there's a K7000 medium res in the Paperboy. So I talked to the owner, and the owner of this told me that he had no problems with the width. The horizontal width was just fine, and he did not have a jittering problem before this died. So it's possible something got taken out that causes that, but to find out, we're going to take this and put this on the Paperboy and see if it looks like this one or if it's still shrunk or has the jitteriness. But you can see here, with this one, we don't have that. So let's get this one in here and see what happens. So here is the old chassis just hanging here, the one you just saw working. It's very dirty, but nonetheless, here it is. And then we have the one we're working on installed, hooked up, anode, neck, yoke, ground, power, video, remote. Remote being the pots here. There's no actual remote board. But let's see if this one has the full width and isn't shaking anymore. So here we go. Still has the jitteriness, it's still jittering. We have our full width though. But let's see if we can make some adjustments here. Okay, so I spent about 10 minutes and got all the adjustments where they need to be. So let's check out and see what it looks like. But it still is jittering. I don't know if you can tell, it's very subtle, but it's still doing this, it's still jittering every so often. Otherwise, we have a nice full square image. So obviously you can use a medium res on a standard res tube for testing, but it's not going to give you an accurate representation of screen size because of the difference in the yoke. Let's see if I can get a screen on here that we can see it's not moving. There you go. See it bouncing around? It's still bouncing around. And I don't know why it's doing that. I have not been able to figure that out. Yeah, it's still, I mean, it's not as pronounced as it is when you first turn it on, but it's still doing it, and I just don't know why it's doing that. So it's going to have to come, at least we know now that it's good. So I can take it back off this tube, take it back home, get it back on the bench, and try and figure out what's making it do the jitter. Okay, so it's the next day here. I've got the chassis back on the tube here and taking this up to the arcade and hooking it up to an actual medium res 7000 tube and yoke, verified that we have a successful repair of this chassis. It has a nice full complete square image. Colors are beautiful. Everything was perfect except it still had the jumpy, jittery vertical image, or vertical deflection. So, well, not really deflection. We had full deflection, but the image was shaky, vertically, I should say. Anyway, so we have verified that our repair of the chassis is complete and it's working great except for the jittery image. So I came home, and last night I changed out various things, and I replaced, I had already replaced IC1 and IC2 in the troubleshooting process from yesterday. And we already have the new Flyback and the full cap kit and the full reflow and everything. But last night, I swapped in a different neck board. It didn't make a difference. I replaced Q4, Q5, Q7. These three transistors, Q4, Q5, and Q7, those are part of the sync circuit. I replaced Q9, because that's part of the vertical circuit for vertical hold, even though our hold was locked on. I thought maybe Q9 might be bad. So all these transistors, actually, they all actually checked good in circuit and out of circuit, but I replaced them anyway. Of course, it made no difference. So out of desperation, I started looking at the schematic. I thought, okay, I've changed out IC1, IC2, all of the transistors for the sync circuit. I checked all the resistors, all the components. Nothing was checking bad. And given everything else that I've done, the only thing left that I hadn't done yet was replace the vertical IC itself, IC3. So I changed out IC3, and now we have a perfect, stable image. No more jumping, no more craziness, and it's pretty much perfect. If we watch it, it does not jump anymore. It's perfect. So, after all that nightmare and that headache, it turned out to be IC3, the vertical IC. So if we go through here and look at everything, let's go to, we have our conversion screen. As you can see, it is not jumping at all. It's perfect. And I have to say that I'm glad we finally got this figured out, because this was a complete total head scratcher. Oh my Lord. I tried everything. And I never would have imagined the IC3, the vertical IC, would have been bad, because it was working. We had full deflection. It wasn't a collapsing issue. It was just a shaky image. So I wouldn't have imagined it was IC3, but as we can see, it is not jumping anymore, and it's pretty much perfect. So let's turn this off and give it an actual signal from the PCB. We're going to use Cruisin' USA. And plug that in, and here we have Cruisin' USA, and we can see here that it's not jumping. If we press start and we look here, it is not jumping around. Of course, you know, again, we have the 3 inches, or actually we have like 4 inches and 3 inches, because again, this is the wrong yoke for this chassis. But we have also proven that you can use a standard res yoke for testing a medium res chassis. Now, of course, you do not want to leave it running forever, because you'll burn this up or burn that up. But for initial testing, to test a medium res on a standard, you absolutely can test it. It works, and it doesn't damage it, because we saw it working on Paperboy last night after running and testing all day yesterday on the standard res. So we have a successful repair. If we look and watch here, the image is not jumping. It is perfect. So I have to say that, yeah, it was just the vertical IC going crazy. I don't know why, but all right. Successful repair. K7000 19-inch medium res chassis. All good to go. So in all told, we had a bad HOT. I think I threw the IC in the garbage by accident. I should have put it up here. We had a bad IC3 vertical IC, a bad HOT under load. It would fail. Then we had a shorted voltage regulator, a bad insulator for the HOT, and the blown fuse. So all told, 5 components. I do want to add that when I did the cap kit, I took that old cap kit out, that Jack Con brand caps. I took the caps out, and 3 of the caps that were supposed to be 50 volt 1 microfarad were 50 volt. No, yes. Somebody had put 3 50 volt 10 microfarads in the spots where 50 volt 1 microfarad was supposed to be. I think it was C11 and C12 and C21 were all three 50 volt 10 when they should have been 50 volt 1. It didn't make a difference. It didn't appear to cause any problem, but that was incorrect. So I found that in the cap kit. So yeah, cap kit, reflow, flyback, the HOT, voltage regulator, vertical IC, blown fuse, and the bad insulator for the HOT. So after all that, we have a working monitor, no more jumpiness, and everything's good to go. So yep, I guess that's it. Kind of long-winded there. I'm glad I got it figured out, but thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Like, share, and subscribe. Got a whole bunch more on the way, so stay tuned for those, and we'll see you next time.